The only thing sometimes that's sadder, more pathetic, funnier, more entertaining than some of the things that us as wrestling fans put out there via forums and social media, YouTube videos, websites, what have you, is the absolutely ridiculous things that we hear come out of the mouths of professional wrestlers and people in the professional wrestling business that, in theory, you would think should know better. But clearly, you understand after a while who the true idiots are and who really doesn't understand at all. And a lot of times, frankly, that's not the fans at all. It's the wrestlers and the people in the business. So I saw this morning something about Magnus having beef with the dirt sheets and the online parasites. And never mind the fact that he wrote this article for Fighting Spirit magazine in the UK that employs several of those gossip writers and internet fans and other people that aren't kind to the company like Jim Cornette. Let's look past that for just a second and let's talk about the stupidity of what Magnus said right here. Now, don't get me wrong. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the dirt sheets. On the hate side, I think they've done a lot of damage to the business in terms of exposing the secrets, in terms of making sure that nothing basically is a secret in terms of way things are going to be booked and planned out, surprises, what have you. But at the same point in time, I love them because, in a way, it gets information out there, and furthermore, it exposes just how stupid the wrestling business and people in the wrestling business are. You're going to bitch about the very thing that you feed information to. Grow up, get a life, and get a clue. So here is an excerpt, and I've got the link to it from CagesideSeats.com in the description box down below. I'm going to read this excerpt from this article of what Magnus said, and then I'll respond to it. Why do internet fans and gossip writers always have to find an ulterior motive for decisions? It baffles me, and frankly irritates the hell out of me that these people always have to assume the worst and report it as fact. More needs to be done in both companies to combat internal sources talking to those parasites. I was asked by a promoter recently if I lost the title because there was heat between me and John Gaborik, our executive VP of Talent and Creative. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, Big and I are able to freely express ourselves to one another, which means we get to speak our minds properly, and we've had that relationship since he first arrived in TNA. Furthermore, how ridiculous is that notion? Do you think if there was heat that he would have put the title on me in the first place? On average, numbers went up across the board while I had the strap. The job of the heel champion is to get the baby faces over and leave the place in a better state than he found it. Mission accomplished. I can't wait to sink my teeth into my next chapter. Oh God. This whole excerpt here is riddled with so many stupid statements. I don't even know where to begin. I guess at the beginning. Why do internet fans and gossip writers always have to find an ulterior motive for decisions? Maybe it's A, because we're looking for something to do. Maybe it's B, because in large part, the wrestling business, just like the real world, a lot of times politics and nepotism and so many other things. It's not what you do, it's who you know and who you screw. All those things come into account. That's called the real world, jackass. Apparently, it's something, again, that the wrestling business is so disconnected from. It baffles and irritates you. People always have to assume the worst and report it as fact. Well, sometimes they assume the worst because of the history of the business over the past 10 to 15 years in particular. And a lot of times it ends up being fact. More needs to be done in both companies to combat internal sources talking to these parasites. Yeah, perhaps. What are you going to do? Fire half of your roster in TNA, half of your roster in the WWE for them talking to the dirt sheets? Furthermore, again, maybe it wouldn't be such an issue if these companies, instead of rebelling against this, they actually embraced it, understanding that this is free publicity and press for what they're doing. And for some reason, WWE and TNA seem to have a huge aversion to this. You have a big segment of your audience. You want to say maybe 1 million to 1.5 million wrestling fans that come on the internet in some way, shape, or form every week that talk about wrestling, look at wrestling articles, what have you. You would think you would want to reach out to them as much as you possibly could and maybe grow that segment of audience perhaps. But what do I know? And Magnus, just because you were asked about something by a promoter doesn't mean that you should be placing the blame on the dirt sheet, because I never heard or saw anything about this whatsoever. Didn't even realize there was any rumors of any heat between you and Big. Didn't even know it. In fact, if you didn't open your big yapper to Fighting Spirit magazine, I don't think anybody else would have known either. Maybe instead of blaming the online parasites and dirt cheese, maybe blame some of the people in your own fucking locker room that spread gossip and rumors on the independent circuit. Did you ever think that was maybe the place to really place blame? But no, like so many other people involved in professional wrestling, you place the blame everywhere else except where it needs to be placed, on yourselves and on your own doorsteps, and you look for ways to excuse and justify everything instead of sometimes saying, hey, you know what, this is unacceptable, it needs to be better, and here's how we're going to do it. You said how ridiculous is the notion that they put the title on you if you had heat with the executive VP of talent and creative. This is the same company, mind you, Magnus, that towards the end of 2013 put the strap on AJ Styles after playing out a story for basically a damn year building up to this, and he wasn't under contract long term. And they did a walkout storyline with AJ Styles that apparently was more real than we realized because the dumb dicks at TNA, your company that you work for, decided it wasn't important enough to, I don't know, maybe re-sign him long term before they actually did that type of storyline. On average, numbers went up across the board while you had the strap. Now, maybe the first few weeks you could sit there and say the ratings went up just a little bit, but that maybe had more so to do, I would think, with, I don't know, maybe the end of the NFL season, perhaps? Just a thought. Just a thought, Magnus. But I'm wondering what numbers you're referring to. You're talking about misinformation and the lies and gossip that gets put out there. Well, this is a lie. Just a flat-out lie. In no way, shape, or form did numbers go up across the board, Magnus, you stupid fuck, while you were the champion. Look at the attendance at Lockdown. Need I say more? Look at where the ratings are now for the company. Look at your inability as a company to sell out an 800-seat venue for TV tapings in New York City, in a city of 8 million damn people. But the numbers went up across the board while you were champion. And the job of the heel champion is to get the babyface over. That's only partially true, Magnus, and again, just showing how ridiculous the people in the wrestling business are. You would think the job of a villain would be to get heat on himself, to get himself hated, so that way people will actually pay money, by God, a new concept for TNA, pay money to see the babyface kick the shit out of the villain. Because the villain has gotten heat on himself to ultimately help to get the babyface over. So you couldn't even get that fully right. And talking about leaving it in a better state than when you got it, in what alternate universe are you living in, Magnus? What part of TNA is better now than it was 4 or 5 months ago when you became TNA World Heavyweight Champion? It descended downhill quickly, and it correlates in part to your title reign. Just think about that for a second. You were a terrible world champion. They made you a joke of a world champion. There's a difference between doing heel tactics to have a guy win and then ruining any and all credibility that the heel champion had. Maybe if you actually had a free-flowing expression of ideas with John Gaborik and you had any clue at what the fuck you were doing, maybe at some point in time you'd have said, hey, you know what? This whole thing of making me a paper champion, that's one thing. But at some point in time, doesn't the bad guy have to kick a couple villagers' ass along the way to get some fucking heat on himself? Well, I'm sure you thought of that, didn't you? Yeah, bullshit. And mission accomplished. You really went to the George W. Bush playbook? Yeah, just like that proved to be disastrous for him. It makes you look like a disaster and look like an idiot here. You can't wait to sink your teeth into the next chapter. Well, based off of the last chapter, it can't get a whole lot worse. Now, I get the whole thing of having some anger towards rumors and gossip getting out there. But if you're Magnus, you would think at some point in time, you would be happy that people would be talking about you at all. And again, this wasn't even something that was actually on the internet, something that actually came from the dirt sheets to the best of my knowledge. This is probably some gossip from independent events where a promoter came up to him and asked him. Or maybe the promoter just randomly asked him a fucking question just to ask if that was the case. There might not even have been any gossip to begin with. So Magnus, if you're going to blame people for something, make sure you're blaming them for something that they actually did. Because when you blame them for something they didn't do, it just makes you look like a moron and it invalidates the things that you say. Which isn't hard because you said a lot of stupid things just in that little excerpt from CageSideSeats.com that I read via Fighting Spirit magazine. You know, maybe if the people in the wrestling business understood that at this point in time, and in particular in TNA's case, that there aren't a whole lot of people in major media outlets writing about professional wrestling. You need all the publicity, in particular free publicity you could possibly get. Maybe it's time to, instead of rebelling against it and talking shit about it and hating on it, maybe it's time, God forbid, to embrace it. Why would you go out of your way from a business standpoint to alienate any point or any segment of your audience, of your customer base? I don't get this. Now, you can say from the WWE standpoint, they love trolling the internet because maybe that's a quarter to a third of their total audience, and that's a minority of their audience. But still, why would you go out of your way to piss off a quarter to a third of your fucking audience, especially when that quarter to a third of your audience generates a lot of the overall revenue for your company via buying the WWE network and the merchandise, actually going and paying the outrageous ticket prices, That's not a good business model. And from TNA's standpoint, the internet fan definitely comprises, I would think, a much larger segment and portion of the total overall fan base of the company. Why would you go out of your way when you're clearly not in a position to do so, when you can't even sell out 800-seat venues, when you barely draw 300 people to your live events on a consistent basis, when your ratings are spiraling down, your pay-per-view buy rates, let's not even joke about that, how pathetic they are. You're going to sit there and alienate a large segment of your fan base? No wonder a company like TNA struggles. No wonder a company like TNA can't get its own footing. No wonder a company like TNA can't establish its own identity. And no wonder idiots like Magnus don't become big stars. It's because of bullshit like this. How about embracing any exposure, any publicity, especially ding-dong, dumb dick publicity that you don't have to pay for? Everybody in TNA, everybody in WWE should be doing interviews for PW Torch, the Wrestling Observer newsletter, all the chop shop dirt sheets like Wrestling Inc. and No DQ. You should be there. You know, you should be on every freaking one of those websites. You should be plastering them with pro-TNA propaganda, going straight to the source. If somebody says it's stupid and you know it's stupid, acknowledge it's stupid and talk about how you're going to make it better. Stop blasting the fans. Stop blaming the fans for your own incompetencies and stupidities. This is basic business 101 here. Something, again, that TNA clearly doesn't understand, and clearly, based off of what Magnus says, TNA's talent clearly doesn't understand. Your biggest problem as a company is your inability to effectively market, promote, and advertise your product. And here you are with an avenue that costs you no money. Free advertising. You sit there and rebel against it and you shit on it and try to alienate your fan base. You know, it's dumb shit like this that almost makes me wish TNA would fail. Because at the end of the day, the people involved with the company will have done what was needed to deserve this. And Magnus, I implore upon you. You are a young talent in the business. To me, I still see a guy with big-time potential and big-time upside. But maybe instead of writing these articles, blasting the fans, maybe you should be doing articles selling yourself and selling the product and saying, this is why you need to check out TNA. This is what we're doing to get better. This is what we're doing to improve. This is what we're doing to become an international mainstream wrestling company. What do you think writing this accomplished? Really, what did it accomplish? It accomplished nothing. It's not going to help sell Slammiversary. It's not going to help put people in the Hammerstein Ballroom for TV tapings. It's not going to help put asses in the seats for live events. It accomplished nothing. Which pretty much is TNA's MO over the past 12 years. They accomplished nothing. So, at the end of the day, I really wish people like Magnus would just shut the hell up. Focus on getting yourself better. Focus on getting your product better. And focus on actually marketing, promoting, and advertise your product better. And maybe things would get better. And maybe you wouldn't have to worry about this gossip or the rumors because you'd be so above it, because you'd be worried about the good things that are going on that you wouldn't have time for that troll crap. Instead, you just end up being the stupid-looking troll to begin with. Magnus, like I said, just do us all a favor. Focus on what you need to do to get better. Focus on what TNA needs to do to get better. And please, stop wasting our time and shut the hell up!